Good morning all, and welcome to the Sport and Heritage and Memories section. I'm joined today by, let's get everybody's bird up, Chris Chatton. For the majority of Chris's career, he's worked in the public sector with local authorities, trusts, and more recently Sport and Heritage. Chris holds a BA in Business Management, an MA in Sport and Community Culture, and the choice of his name and business, Tackle It Solutions Limited, gives away his love for rugby league. Chris is currently working on a National Lottery funded project with the Yorkshire Cricket Foundation, Yorkshire Cricket Heritage Building a Legacy. In collaboration with local cricket clubs, the project seeks to share and collaborate heritage and establish a network of sporting reminiscence sessions and educational resources. I'm also joined by Michael White. Michael set up Football Memories in Falkirk in 2004, and it became a national programme in Scotland 6 years later. Since then, he has helped establish similar reminiscence programs for a variety of sports and now manages Screen Memories and Jukebox Days. He is still actively involved in delivering sports-based reminiscence and works and manages Rugby Memories in Scotland. He's a football historian and author and has a main interest in football, rugby union and speedway. I'm chairing this morning's session. My name is Darren Macy. I'm a social historian at the University of South Wales, project officer overseeing the HLF funded project, run the Cynnydd Sporting Heroes past and present. I have an extensive background in public history and I'm a member of CLAVA, the executive committee of CLAVA, the Welsh Working People's Historical Society. My research interests include sport, poverty and social movements in the 19th and 20th century. I'm currently leading the authorities' re-evaluation of memorialisation in public spaces inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm also a former enthusiastic, and I choose my words quite carefully, enthusiastic rugby prop forward. And as you can see, I have the features to match. Indeed, I spoke to Chris about this yesterday. My mother, a very keen Barrow Rugby League follower, always told me that I had a nose like a cobbler's thumb. So there we go. So there we go. That's broke the ice a little. That's a serious bit out the way. That's a bit I hate in any session, to be honest, is regurgitating all this information. So we're going to be quite informal today. The way it's going to run is we're going to give a presentation each, and then we're going to have a Q&A session, most of the three of us, and then we're going to open it up to questions from everybody listening this morning. If you want to put anything in the chat function, we'll then seek to answer as many questions as possible. What I would say is an hour is not very long, so we'll do our best to keep the time. And as you can already tell, I like the sound of my own voice, so I'll try and keep mine as truncated as possible. Right, so we're going to kick off with my session. So as I said, I'm a project officer for Sport and Heroes in RCT. Oh dear, there we go. I'm going to talk from a slightly different perspective to the other two panelists. I'm going to talk about collective memory. So the collective memory of my area in particular is based on these two things. In terms of sport, it's firmly entrenched in the idea of rugby, maybe rugby, football and boxing being the three main sports. But then if you think of the collective memory of the Rhondda and RCT as in general, it's certainly ingrained in the ideas of mining. So I'm endeavouring to try and shift that collective memory and broaden that collective memory a little bit. So just running through, I mentioned the three big sports in the area. There's a collection of sporting heroes there. That's quite a subjective word. You got in one corner, you got Di Taro Jones, the only Welshman to beat the All Blacks in rugby league and rugby union. Next to Di, you got David Young. David Young's a contemporary of mine. I had the fortune to play alongside David, and unfortunate to play against David on a few occasions. Then you've got next to Mark Busby, you've got Jimmy Murphy, who shaped the Busby Babes. You've got John Bevan in one corner, you've got Jimmy Wilde, the ghost with the hammer in his hands in the other corner, and you get the other corner, then the Welsh Rugby Union side that beat the All Blacks in 1905. So that's generally, when people think of sport in this area, in my area, in RCT, rather kind of tough, that's what they think of. So we're trying to widen that, and the way we're trying to do that is by putting interpretation boards in all of the 64 change rooms across the county borough. So as you can see by the geography, if you've never been to South Wales, we're reasonably defined by our geography. All these change rooms follow the patterns of valleys. So you've got, I don't know if I pointed this, which doesn't do you a lot of good. You've got a kind of valley on the right-hand side. You've got the two Rhondda valleys, and at the base you've got Pontypridd and Taffy area. So what we're trying to do is shift things a little bit. So the project's an 18-month project. These interpretation boards will be 50% historical figure from that locality. That'll be researched by University of South Wales students alongside local history groups, social media forums, and obviously I'm heading that up. So the public will then vote for their sporting hero from that locality. And then the same on the other side of the interpretation board will be a contemporary figure. So it's trying to get the users that facility to link the heritage of their locality with their contemporary sporting heroes. That offers us lots of opportunities, and 64 is a great space. And as the map shows there, we've got a really diverse spread of change rooms. We're entering areas where perhaps history and heritage doesn't normally go. I've selected these three gentlemen. They're the two gentlemen's heroes there. They trained in the same gym or trained in the same gym. The top one is Tommy Farr. He's fighting against Joe Lewis there in the 30s. Really still accessible in Rhondda Cynon Taf, still seen as a hero, still easily identifiable. Training at the same gym is Liam Williams. Liam's a boxer who probably, I would think, would go on to win a world title in the next 18 months, 2 years, depending on obviously COVID dependent. So quite accessible, quite identifiable with the general public, both of these gentlemen. What this project hopefully does is not identify 64 historic figures, but in fact, because we're offering a public vote both in the contemporary and historic figures, it offers us the opportunity to research 252 individuals. Now that gives us a really good opportunity to investigate stories and individuals which perhaps the public wouldn't know about or would identify with. There's lots of these examples. Sports in this area which are not very prevalent anymore. You've got top right hand corner, quoits, handball. There's a fantastic example of a handball player from 19th century, the wonderfully named Dr. Alex Ajax Lewis. We've got some fantastic research on him. Even in, you don't think show jumping in Rhondda Cynon Taf, that's Harry Llewellyn and the world famous show jumper. You've got disability sports as well. You've got Kelly Morgan, badminton. Even going so far, I think at the bottom corner, you've got Leighton Rees and Alan Evans. Richard Burnett is from Rhondda, he's a world champion darts player, Wayne Moran. So there's lots. In the middle, then there's Tonopandi AFC. The Mushrooms, as they were known, played in Division 1 in the 20s and were attracting the same type of crowds. And so sure Michael like to talk about this as well. Same type of crowds as Man United and Liverpool. So, but have completely disappeared now. So we can identify these types of also perhaps sports you wouldn't think about. Cycling being one. The 1890s, you've got Jimmy Michael, Arthur Linton, both world champions in the 1890s, 1894, 1895 respectively. So cycling again, it's becoming more prevalent, but actually every time I look at that photo, I think of the goodies. But I don't know which one's Tim Brooke Taylor and which one's Graham Gardner. I'm not quite sure, but you get the point. Arthur Linton was described as, again, I won't read out the newspaper extract, defining Welshness. When you think of Wales in the 1890s, you don't necessarily think of a cyclist as defining Welshness and defining what Welsh masculinity is. So really, really interesting. This is a drawing made by Toulouse-Lautrec. It's actually of Jimmy Michael. It's made as a part of a publicity drive, advertising drive for a Simpson chain manufacturing company. Actually, they rejected the design because Lautrec's drawing of the chain wasn't quite factually correct. The National Museum of Wales actually purchased 200 copies of one of Michael's posters, but it's not currently on show, which I'm starting a campaign to get Jimmy Michael Lautrec post it back on show. And if not, perhaps they can lend it to my museum. For anybody out there listening from the Museum of Wales, I'd love to have a lend. Also, again, think of this shift in this communal memory. Certainly, one thing's excluded, certainly in the first late 19th century, first half of the 20th century, women in sport. This is an example of a female hockey player, quite a famous at the time, quite a famous female hockey player, Miss Bevan. I'll call her Miss Bevan for a moment. So Miss Bevan was became an international rugby player, as you can see. And again, I won't read through it. The not very successful female Welsh hockey team, actually, I think they did lose 10 goals to 0 to Ireland. They ran between 1902 to 1909 and didn't win a game. That's not to say Miss Bevan wasn't a very good hockey player and was recognised as a good hockey player at that point. Miss Bevan, it's quite problematic. In no newspaper accounts you hear her first name. She's always referred to, if occasionally you get the initial M, but mostly she's ignored in newspaper reports. Her first name is ignored, so she's excluded from history. I've put the image in, but I can't find any images of a contemporary Welsh women's hockey team. So this is borrowed from New Zealand, but I would have thought the attire is reasonably accurate. Like I mentioned, Miss X. It took us, I'd say, about 3 or 4 weeks of pretty in-depth research to discover that Miss X was in fact Margarita. Now, how we found out that she was Margarita, I wouldn't read that out, but it is such a prolonged and in-depth process just to discover a female sports person's first name. So I think we need to readdress that. We need to shift away from perhaps that male dominance, certainly at this point. And what does that give us if we can shift that communal memory, if we can shift the emphasis a little bit? This is actually an extract from 2011, where a young girl from the same village or the same area as Margarita Bevan has gone on to play for the Wales under-16 hockey team. Now, I'm sure the Shan would never have heard of Margarita Bevan, would never come across her in any memorialisation, in any commemoration. She's completely disappeared from history, completely disappeared from that local heritage. Hopefully I can address that, and that's what we're trying to address. So we're trying to broaden the base and diversify the idea of heritage, and try to maybe offer a more nuanced idea of what the history of our area is involved with. So I've tried to whistle through things there quite quickly. If I'm honest, 10 minutes is nowhere near long enough to discuss any of these topics. So I'm sure my fellow panelists will agree that it is a little bit whistle stop. I have the luxury, thankfully, of being in a session this afternoon. So anybody who would like to hear about this project in a little bit more depth, or certainly in at least another 10 minutes more depth, and how it relates to community engagement, feel free to drop into my session this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Well, that's enough for me for the moment. I think I just about kept under 10 minutes, which I'm quite shocked about, to be honest. So I'd like to hand over to Chris. So, Chris.
Thanks for the introduction, Darren. I'll try and keep to 10 minutes as well, or we'll see how it goes. I'll just share my screen now. Oh, Darren, can you stop your screen share? Okay, so My project is Yorkshire Cricket Heritage, Reminiscence and Education, Building a Legacy. Not one that rolls off the tongue for the marketeers out there, but we try and encompass everything we do in a title. Maybe not the best thing. We're fortunate to secure funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and we've obviously got the ambition to cover lots of areas within this project. Just a bit about the Yorkshire Cricket Foundation first, who I work for. We're the official charity and community arm of Yorkshire County Cricket Club, and a part of a strategic house there, you could say, with the Yorkshire Cricket Board and Pro Coach, the kind of 4 organisations at Headingley, all doing different things in relation to the development of cricket across Yorkshire. As a foundation, we like to think we can do things a little bit different. So our vision is to create community without boundaries, and using the power and the brand of Yorkshire Cricket to have a positive impact on the community. And our activities fall within four key themes: participation, education, heritage. Well, the heritage one's obviously the most important one. Clearly, I haven't won a tie today, so I'm sorry I'm not as smart as the picture. Health and well-being is obviously a really important strand as well, which we cut across and cover some of that in my project. I just wanted to share this quote really to start with, because I think it covers quite well what the entirety of the project focuses on, bringing that kind of cricket history and heritage back to the forefront. So cricket, a fundamental part of local cultural tradition, yet often the heritage of the grounds and societies that shape them is neglected. And we've worked with 15 clubs, or over 15 clubs, extensively across the Leeds Bradford postcode area, both on the projects relating to the development of educational resources based on the history and heritage coming out of clubs. Fran gave a great presentation about that yesterday, so you'll be able to see that if you missed it in the fullness of time next week. But my focus is more on the reminiscence and how we've engaged with clubs to an extent, but widened the offer. So there, just a summary of what the project in its entirety is focusing on. So our approach to sporting reminiscence, project started way back in July, August last year. Our approach was to initially engage a supplier that could work with us and work with the clubs and other community organisations to develop a variety of reminiscence groups. You may have heard of Sporting Memories. They're one of the people we engage with. They did some training with our project volunteers, essentially the volunteers coming from the cricket clubs which we engaged. And we also engaged a relatively new organisation called Dewsbury Memories, who offered a slightly different approach to sporting reminiscence. And we're fortunate to find them. Actually, I found them on Sporting Heritage Day last year, so just over a year ago, and attended a Sporting Heritage Day at Heritage Quay, Huddersfield, which some of you might be aware of. It's where the Rugby League archive is. And their approach to reminiscence was interesting. So we thought that we'd offer our volunteers training in a Sporting Memories approach and the Dewsbury Memories approach. So that ravelled forward. And the plan was with this project to establish face-to-face local groups. But obviously due to COVID, that couldn't happen. The ambition was to have local groups within cricket clubs, within care homes, within other community venues that could link back to that local cricket club. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we've been able to develop a different offer using Zoom, but that hasn't allowed the coverage we'd have hoped. So we moved forward. I think it was late April when we started this with Dewsbury Memories, and their primary interest is rugby league. So it started off with Dewsbury, with face-to-face groups in Dewsbury. They've then extended to Batley, another kind of rugby league heartland. And then COVID hit when we're about to launch our first session in Skipton, at Skipton Cricket Club. So we came up working with Sporting Memories, a Zoom, an online Zoom reminiscence approach. They started a rugby league memories one on a Friday just to see what the uptake was like, and gradually that grew. And I'd like to think that through our the promotion of the activities, we've been able to help them grow their offer. So now I think they're working with York City Knights, another professional rugby league club, and also Huddersfield Giants as well. So that they've grown their offer through lockdown, and I'd like to think that through the work that we've done in terms of the volunteers from clubs, the personnel we've attracted as well, I think we've helped each other, because a lot of people are interested in cricket reminiscence, are also interested in rugby league. So the people we've attracted to cricket have attended their Friday group, and we have a Thursday group that's kind of more cricket focused. So there's a bit of cross fertilization. And during the course of the months that we've been doing this, Dewsbury Memories have kind of changed the name to Looking Back, which gives them a kind of more holistic approach to when they're approaching new partners, so they can be attractive to other areas, not just Dewsbury. So just a picture really of what our reminiscence sessions look like. These are the cricket sessions that you can see on here that we host in partnership with Looking Back on Thursday afternoons at 2 p.m. So we started, it was very much an informal discussion group. And for me, if you get the right facilitation, the right chair, should we say, conversations can just flow. But sometimes it's good to share some pictures. And these are pictures that are being shared of members of the group. So we started off with a discussion group, then we started sharing pictures, and now we're encouraging on a weekly basis attendees to send in, their own memories from their own clubs, and it makes for a good discussion. The other thing that can be done is conversation starters. Probably familiar with those, the others on the call. What's your favourite memory? What was your first memory of cricket? Is always a good one. Or what's your first memory of rugby league if you're doing rugby league? And then the conversations can lead in lots of different directions, and probably quite interest everyone in the group as well. And then Sporting Heritage Day came, so I thought we need to do something a bit special for that. So we kind of tried doing a session at a different time, early evening, 6 o'clock. So it's hopefully after tea, had something to eat, but before you watch your soaps, Emmerdale, Coronation Street, or whatever you want to watch. So this was quite well attended, and what we planned to achieve in this was invite some minor celebrities, guests along to chat to the group. So it wasn't come and give a talk, it was joining in the conversation. So Jonathan Doidge, he's a cricket caller on Radio Leeds, he came along. And then there was Mike Latham and Tony Hannon as well, who've written some books on the history of cricket. And this helped us attract more people to our regular sessions on a Thursday. We've got a few more regulars out of that. And then James Mason on the left, he tweeted about this. James is the CEO of Welcome to Yorkshire, the tourist organisation for the area. And he's sort of passionate about reminiscence and dementia groups, because he set up the Bradford Memories CAF as well. So he's got an interest in that. So it was good to get that kudos and recognition from them. And then moving on to local groups, as I said at the start of this process, our ambition really was to set up local groups, which hasn't been possible with the COVID issues and lockdown. But as Skipton Cricket Club had a real interest in this, and there was another good volunteer facilitator which attended our training, Jai Mukherjee. he had the enthusiasm and passion to set something up on Zoom. And over the last couple of weeks, we've been going with a further local Reminiscence group. So we're really hoping this can build, and we're in challenging times. The technology is sometimes a challenge as well, but we're trying our best to kind of get people to these sessions. The other route in terms of promotion, which has been quite good, is through the local social prescribing networks, and they're promoting it across the kind of West Yorkshire area, really, for us, the area of interest. So some of the people they come into contact with, they'll come into that and have a nice afternoon, really, and it's just something a bit different to do while we're in lockdown or semi-lockdown. So what's the future look like? I'm coming to the end now, hopefully not over time, Darren. The future, so we want to continue our weekly groups. We have a Thursday group which meets 2 o'clock every week. Monthly special events. On the back of the event we did for Sport and Heritage Day, we'll look to host another one of them in a couple of weeks. And it's all part of the piloting and testing process to see what is really best for the people who attend. How can we tweak things to make that better? As part of the project, we have appointed external evaluation experts. So we're doing several surveys, and hopefully they can then help us improve and develop our offer, really, as we go forward. And we do have the scope to introduce a second weekly group as interest grows. A solution for engaging with care homes. That has been a challenge during the lockdown. So rather than engaging with people living with dementia and people that might be socially isolated, it's been a challenge to get to the hub of those people who might want or need it more so. So the route for us in lockdown has been through the social prescribing network. We are hoping that we can get our offer into care homes in the fullness of time. But I think, with lockdown and the challenges, we're all a bit socially isolated. So these sessions can be beneficial for anyone, really. And obviously we'd like to work with other local groups and established groups as interest and the local facilitators emerge. And what I see it as we call it a Skipton model, really, but it's almost taking on the knowledge and expertise from Looking Back and Sporting Memories, and kind of doing something what works best for local people or the group you're working with. Just like to share this photo, really. This is a Dementia Do session run by Andy Tyso, a really good facilitator, and gave us all an understanding, everyone attended, what it's like to live with dementia and how best we can communicate and not exclude people who are living with dementia. A really great session. And I just want to say thanks for listening. Any questions? This is a picture at North Leeds Cricket Club. They have an annual Boxing Day game, and this is one in the snow. Thought a great picture to finish with, really.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Chris. Moving swiftly on, we'll have a chat about the three presentations after this. Michael?
Chris, can you clear your screen, please?
Sure, sorry.
I can't. School by error, same as me, Chris.
Hello there. Sorry about that little hitch at the start. I'm going to talk about Speedway, which is one of the dying sports, but has a tremendous heritage, which is just lying there waiting to be told to the rest of the world. We'll look at where the sport began, the rich heritage it has, and how it can be applied to memories work, and how it can give all of you, whichever sport you're working in, the opportunity to really help people in a way that's probably as effective, if not more so, than giving them pills or tablets or meds. The basics of Speedway, I think for those of you who are not familiar, are 4 riders going round an oval track 4 times. It has aspects of league tables, promotion, relegation, very much a summer sport. And lots of people who were interested in Speedway came to it from maybe being rugby fans or football fans in the winter time. It's an exciting sport, but it's also very, very dangerous. 500cc bikes with no brakes. It originated in Australia, but quickly came to Britain, and this is where the heritage part shows up. Tracks sprung up in virtually every major town or city. Some of them didn't last very long, but they left a history that is tremendous, and people are out there who can remember these tracks and the riders. Its heyday was just after the war, and crowds of 10,000 plus were not uncommon. And in some places, the Speedway crowds were bigger than the football crowds. We had several teams up here in Scotland, and in 1951, we actually had the world champion from Edinburgh Monarchs. But since then, the sport has declined, and the 2 tracks that are left are in Glasgow and Edinburgh. Edinburgh on the left, run out of Armadale, which is halfway between Glasgow and Edinburgh, whereas Glasgow Tigers are still in the city. The heritage is a very rich one, and it's a worldwide heritage, and this is where there are huge opportunities to expand the range of sporting heritage. Britain was very much a speedway college where riders from Scandinavia, Eastern Europe, Australia, and New Zealand came to learn the sport. And these riders are internationally known. We have 2 Speedway Memories groups. One is based in the Football Museum at Hampden Park, which is run by Doug Nicholson, who's just directly across from the guy with the red baseball cap. And the one in Edinburgh runs out of a rugby club, and it's organised by Mike Hunter, who is the guy sitting on the extreme right of the table.
Sorry to interrupt, Michael. You're not sharing your screen.
Right. My one shows up as if I am. Hang on.
I thought that was a preamble to your presentation. So.
Oh, sorry. Right. I don't know. Right. Hang on. Right.
Michael, it's Jo here.
Yeah.
I've got your presentation here. I've got Sporting Heritage and Memories. You must remember this. Shall I try and share my screen?
Can you pop that up then? Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Just bear with me. Bear with me, everybody. Lovely technical hitches again. It's a joy.
Well, while Joe's doing that, Chris, is a question. How did you get into? Oh, there we go. Michael's
I've got
up.
it. Right, got it back. Okay, I'll go back to the memories slide then, okay?
Yeah.
Right, I've got that?
Yay, Speedway Memories Group.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that, folks. Right, we have 2 Speedway Memories groups, one based in Glasgow, Hampden Park, run by Doug Nicholson, who's the chap directly across from the man in the red baseball cap, and one in Edinburgh run by Mike Hunter, who is on the extreme right of that photograph. Very well attended, and the people who come along to these groups bring memorabilia and artifacts that are of international standard, and really you'd be hard pushed to better their knowledge of the sport. The main source of archive material are the programs people kept, not just for the data of the races, but also of the adverts and adverts of places and products that no longer exist. And there's always a rich debate about the prices of the pre-decimal money and the costs of today. So the individual heritage collections that people have led to accumulation of material, which forms an online database and periodicals that are dedicated to the heritage of the sport. Speedway fans were great collectors, and as well as programs, and they collected badges and loyalty bars to show their loyalty to a particular team. So all of this stuff is out there waiting to be catalogued and to be digitized and preserved for future generations. The most powerful memories that people have are of their early days when they first went to the sport. And it's gone in a circle where people go along with their parents, the grandparents, and then they too bring along their family members. There's a great gender balance in the groups and for Speedway in general. And with big crowds, you'd be lucky to see one policeman. There's absolutely no crowd trouble. We've also got a secret museum, and just outside of Edinburgh, with a collection of international standing. It has everything you could imagine about the sport, but the tragedy is that very few people know about it, and there's limited access. They've recreated everything you could think of to do with Speedway, and these two old guys will talk to you in a wee while, because this is really the essence of where heritage can be applied. They've recreated with papier-mâché models key elements of a meeting, the tapes that started the races and the pit area where people went to see what was happening about bikes that were malfunctioning and the excitement of trying to get a replacement bike ready for the next race. But the memories are triggered not just by still images, but by noise and by smells. And everybody can remember the fuel that was used in the bikes. And everybody can remember being peppered by fine bits of grit and shale and cinder as the bikes cornered. People got very powerful memories that can be triggered by all these things. And some of the memories are tremendously important to preserve the heritage of the sport. We are also fortunate in having amateur footage taken in the tracks. And people can remember the minute details of the meetings, where they stood, who they went with, the away trips in particular, where a bus of spectators would go on a weekend trip down south. And the riders of the time were idolized just as much as pop stars or football stars are today. And the spectators developed a personal relationship with these guys. The program collections contain the center pages made up of details, and all of these facts have been gathered and put together to form a database. In terms of still images, and these are important for people living with memory problems, we have, again, a tremendous collection that one man has accumulated at his own personal expense, and the ultimate aim is to put these online for future generations. So there's plenty of footage out there. Nationally, the very poor collections by Pathy Newsreels and the national broadcasters. So the main moving image archive is held by spectators. Volunteer involvement in Speedway was phenomenal. Meetings would not have taken place without the input from fans, and they carried out every possible role you could think of. So this is the key part, that sporting heritage can play a tremendous part in helping people who are lonely, isolated, or living with memory problems. You notice an improved mood, better communication skills. They're amongst friends, and there's a community of interest. It's the sport that binds them together. The sessions are full of laughter and enjoyment, and the improved recall is not just of the sport, and this would apply to any sport at all. It's what they remember about aspects of the social and economic history of the time. So the argument we have is that you can apply sports heritage for medical benefits, and sooner or later, people in the medical profession will prescribe sporting heritage applications for people in these categories. There's an international potential, there's a Great Britain potential in this, and there's a massive potential for involving children in school with older people. The key to all of it, going back to our two old guys here, is taking people back to a time when they were young.
Two brilliant presentations, Annie. Excellent. Chris, you mentioned the problems with COVID. I think both of you have done a brilliant job overcoming that. Do you see any other different solutions apart from what you've done, or is there any way you could get some funding and do more, or you know?
Yeah, I think one of the things which would be helpful, particularly people who maybe aren't used to using laptops and Zooms and things like that, the funding of iPads, so that people can be given iPads if they don't already have them already, so that they can then be trained or have the technology to access our Zoom sessions. I did notice the other day in Kirklees, one of the local authority areas in West Yorkshire, Age UK are providing free iPads. So if there's anyone living in Kirklees who's not got them elderly people, that's a great way to get an iPad, and then they can log into our Reminiscence sessions and anything else that's going on, even in the world. Because one of the benefits of being online, in one of our early sessions, there were some ex-players from Skipton Cricket Club who were living in the London area, had been furloughed from work, and they logged in to have a chat. It's great.
Brilliant. What about you, Michael?
Well, this is one of the areas where the cross-generation stuff can come in. The people we're trying to reach are maybe going to struggle with iPads, but carers, family members, children or grandchildren, they've grown up with this. So they can sit in and they can act as prompts, memory prompts to the people. But I noticed that one of the charities, I think it's Rotary, were looking to try and help their local clubs by providing funding to help reach vulnerable groups. And that iPad thing is a potential way. So maybe if you contact your local Rotary club and see if they're involved in this, it's one way of getting to an audience that's difficult to reach. But that's okay for visual stuff, but there'll be no substitute for the smells and the noises.
Yeah,
I think that's two great points. I'm quite conscious that we're approaching 15:15, so I think if we open it up to the questions from the audience. First one's for Chris. Andrew from the Glamorgan Museum of Welsh Cricket. Do you record your sessions and then post them onto YouTube?
No, we don't. We could do that. Obviously, we'd have to have the permission of people in the group, but that's certainly something to consider. Yeah, that's a great point, Andrew. Not really thought about that.
What about you, Michael? Is there any access to that type of thing with viewers, or?
Well, we're kind of looking at now, we're not going to be able to meet face to face for some considerable time. So the whole focus of the projects, I think, will go to online stuff, packages to be delivered into care homes. That's where it's essential that the activities coordinators in these care homes are involved with this kind of work.
Yeah, brilliant. Another one for Chris. How did he get in touch with the Social Prescribing Network?
That's a good question. It's very difficult during lockdown. I think it started because we had a proactive, I spoke a bit in the presentation about the work we've done with Skipton, and now we've got a local group in Skipton. The volunteer there and facilitator was really proactive. So got it into, he approached his local doctor's surgery and the social prescriber and got her on board. And then from that, I got in touch with her and said, well, we really want to roll this out across your network. So then she invited me to her team meeting, which covers a wider network. And then I think even wider across like the Bradford and Leeds area. So it started from, the project inspiring the local clubs to push it how we wanted to do it, even in even in the challenging times, and approached care homes as well, but didn't get any opportunity, which is quite understandable in the current situation. So it's quite fortunate, but you know, there's Leeds Older People's Forum as well, and a good kind of Google search will give you kind of local older people's organisations and doctor surgeries. But it's helpful if you can get the volunteers you've engaged in the project to do that work, because it just becomes immense if you don't.
Darren, could I just say something about intergenerational work?
Yeah.
We've had school groups involved in this, and we started out with a training program, a joint training program with the schools ourselves and the NHS staff to give a very, very basic introduction to dementia. And in one of the groups we had, there was a young school pupil who was obviously wanting to talk to us at the end, and he had really enjoyed the session, and he said, I think my granddad's got this. And he was the first person in the family to be aware that the old chap was struggling with his memory. So that came out of his involvement in a memory session.
From my own personal experience as well, I mentioned my mother was a big Barrow fan, big rugby league Barrow fan. She went to Wembley 3 times. I was talking to Chris about this yesterday. But every time I went to see my mother in a care home, she'd ask me to sing, even though I can't sing, Abide With Me. So just the songs and that connection, and she'd be a young girl. It's difficult to underestimate or overestimate the power of this. Is absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. For both of you, what are your top tips for any organisation wanting to start up a project like this?
Chris, on you.
Do you want me to go first, Mike?
Yeah.
The top tip is, I think it's been useful for us to get different experiences. So sporting memories, how they do things is quite structured. So they'll sing songs and pass balls around it in a kind of when you face-to-face setting. Whereas the looking back way of doing things is a bit less structured. Some people who access these sessions might welcome structure, some don't. And I guess we're within the project, we're piloting that. It's been good. So one, it's been good to get different experiences of different providers. But two, I think it's important to learn from those providers, because the sustainability is, you know, get the training from the providers, find some passionate volunteers who know the local audience, and then it becomes sustainable. And it doesn't have to be expensive, but if you've got Zoom, it can be. If you get a good volunteer, it's free. So the long-term sustainability, and for the purposes of the NLHF, our funders as well, these sessions can have longevity if you find the right volunteers in the community. I've gone on a bit now. I'll let Michael say.
Right. We in terms of the sports we cover, we've got about 250 groups all across Scotland, and they all vary. But following on from something that Chris said, the key to the success is the volunteers. We have no staff at all. We have no income at all. Everybody is a volunteer. And it's finding volunteers who can empathise with older people, who can appreciate the situation they're in, who are tremendously patient and understanding, and have some awareness of what living with memory problems is like. What you don't want, and it's a good negative lesson, is you don't want what you might call sports anoraks, who are so steeped in the sport that they're obsessed with factual detail and minutiae, because they will quickly turn people off. So I think it's an element of training, of awareness of old age, and then finding people to adapt to local groups and local circumstances. And sometimes you go along to a group, whether it's a speedway group, a rugby group, or whatever, and after about 5 minutes, the chat goes away from the sport and to all aspects of social and economic history. And you can't have people who say, oh, no, we're here to look at this picture and tell me who this is. You're not. You go with the flow. And some of the stories that have emerged from the groups are little short of sensational, and they haven't appeared in any of the sports history books. And we need to record these memories while we've still got these people with us.
put this is for me really. Put my historian hat on, and coming back to what you just said, are you thinking about recording an oral history? Are you thinking about actually? I don't want to be scientifically, but actually formally recording and these memories.
Yeah, we've done that with a couple of the other sports. We've done short, sort of 2-minute clips, which would be ideal to put into a podcast. And some of them have come away with the most incredible detail that even professional historians of sports have been astounded by. And their initial reaction was, "Oh, that can't possibly be right." But then when you do research it and double check, these people are actually correct. And I think I posted up the Tommy Farr picture that you had. I can remember my Welsh grandfather telling me about the shifts and the results of the fight coming down on the coal trucks. Tommy ahead on points, Tommy still in there all the way through. Now that's a really, really powerful memory. And again, there is a still image of it, which would trigger all kinds of memories with me.
Before we go to you, Chris, yeah, I think you're spot on. That's one of the reasons I chose somebody like Tommy Farr, because the resonance even today with younger people in our area is absolutely incredible, absolutely incredible. I'm trying to shift it, broaden it, because I think breadth is one of the things you just mentioned there, that even though you're talking about one subject, you can learn so much about social history across a complete range of subjects by investigating this. Sorry, I took up some of your time there, Chris. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with Michael's point there about learning from the people who engage with these sessions, and the stories or some of the anecdotes that come out won't be in any history books. And what I find, or what I think is important about Reminiscence as well, some of the clubs that I mentioned, like the rugby league clubs that are running sessions, that will probably be Reminiscence geared towards, what it was like supporting the club or your memories of this day. Whereas I think how my project varies, and possibly Michael's as well, is in the sense that they're talking about, more local cricket, and that's a great way of understanding social history and getting to the hub of how we've developed as a society, really.
Great question, which none of us are going to be able to answer. How do we get the government? How can the government be persuaded to fund Reminiscence activity?
Well,
if you've got the answer now, one, Michael, please share.
Right. I think the key is really to do a lot of lobbying with the medical profession, and more people. We do a lot of work in hospitals, and even some of the hospital professional staff, the doctors and nurses, are amazed at the effects of this kind of reminiscence therapy. Now, if we all came forward and tried to lobby politicians, they would just see us as a minority group who are interested in sports history. But if we had powerful testimonies from family members and from the carers organisations, and also from the medical profession, that's maybe the way to do it. And I would love to see us in a few years' time have GPs writing out a prescription, go and attend your local sports memories group. That's what we want to get towards.
Chris?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and like I said, the Reminiscence doesn't need to be expensive, but I recognise you can't always rely on volunteers to coordinate and do everything. It probably needs a strategic approach, and it's where that comes from. I agree with Michael about lobbying politicians, and to a point, what we've done on a local basis, the social prescribing network, they seem really on board with it. But the challenge, I'm a convert, and I think Michael is as well. And if people want to get into these sessions, I think very rarely do they think this is a load of rubbish or not helpful to them. But the challenge, it's a bit like I've set up a rugby league club in Bath, and trying to get them to play rugby league when it's a rugby union area, it's really difficult. But once you get them in, they enjoy it. And I think this is the same thing. the challenge is getting people there in the marketing and promotion of it, and particularly in COVID times, it has brought us all challenges, but I think we've overcome that and still getting a lot of interest.
I think that's a fantastic pathway, and some of the things that come out. There's the generation. I think the connecting and the supporting with iPads, I think that's really important as well. But it's not just important; it's cost effective. I've unfortunately both my parents had dementia, and the cheaper solutions can be the best solutions, and the more holistic solutions are far better than any medication you can prescribe. Far better.
The tragedy of this work is that the effect is quite short-lived. I mean, there's no magic bullet in this, but if we could only get the funding to do sessions more often than we do, that would help. And the volunteers who take part in these projects, they get a tremendous buzz and lift out of it as well. And there's a real feel-good factor. So from all kinds of aspects of COVID, we might find that the new focus on loneliness and isolation, the focus on old age, who knows, this might be the opportunity to push this forward and get it much higher up the agenda. And we reached probably an all-time low with some of the stuff said about older people over the past few months. And I think this is the time to say, right, when things do go back to normal, let's make it a better normal than it was.
Just to come in on that point, I think that one of the possible routes for it might be to use the Sporting Heritage Network, or the links that Sporting Heritage have as an organisation to lobby government as a potential way forward.
I think you've already answered this question, but we just come out to time. Is there one thing you'd want people to take away from this session? I think we've touched on it there, actually, the three of us, but is there one message you'd like to people to take away?
Yeah, for me, the message is it doesn't matter what the sport is, that everybody has a box of memories, and our task is to find which key opens the box. It won't be rugby for everybody, it won't be speedway for everybody, but there is a key, and with a proper training, enthusiasm and support, we can all find what the key is.
Absolutely. I don't think I could say anything else. I agree. I agree with that, and it's just important we raise awareness and come back to that point of seeing if we can lobby the decision makers in a strategic way to raise the importance of this. And hopefully it will come out of these COVID times when people have mental health issues. And I think this Reminiscence is probably useful for anyone of any age. If you are stuck in your house, you like reminiscing, don't you?
Oh, definitely. Well, I'm really conscious that we're just about out of time. But a couple of pieces of housekeeping. Thank you both, gentlemen. That's absolutely fantastic session. I thought you were both superb, both in your presentations and your responses to questions. I'm really sorry that we couldn't answer all the questions. I think we could sit here for the rest of the afternoon and discuss this and still not answer all the questions. So that's been brilliant. Anybody wants to listen to any more of my project, please tune in at 2 o'clock, and I'll talk about engagement and give a little bit of depth to the presentation I gave earlier. Also, if you'd like to join Joe in the Sporting Heritage Hangout at 12:30, that looks a really useful session. Once I've drawn breath and had a cup of tea, I'll join the session myself as well. So, and most of all, I'd like to thank everybody who watched this session today as well. Hopefully, you can all take something from it. And for me, just get lobbying. Yeah, just bang the table and tell your politician they work for us. Sorry. Thanks so much, y'all.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.